G'day folks, welcome to Turning Tuesday. This week is the footed bowl from the 3 bowls of Claret Ash from the other week. This week is the entire video of the first bowl that I completed, and I will be doing commentary throughout. So, buckle up and let's go through what I did. At this point in the video, I've already taken to the bandsaw to create the blank. I have drilled out the center hole and mounted to the chuck using a woodworm screw. I will now move on to roughing with my Crown M42 half-inch bowl gouge. You'll see I'm doing some face cuts there, I'm doing some push cuts, and I'm just whittling it down and trying to get it to round. While the roughing's happening, I'd like to thank everyone for tuning in. I've seen a steady increase in subscribers since starting to do bowl content. Now, I'm not an experienced bowl turner. I do not try and hide that fact. I'm not a professional. I am guessing my way through a lot of the time, and I make plenty of mistakes. So I really do appreciate those in the community that reach out and provide some guidance or advice, because, as I said, I'm not experienced. I am pretty good with the pens, but when it comes to bowls, these are fairly new to me, and yeah, I'm just enjoying making them because they're coming out absolutely beautiful, and I've had this wood sitting around for a while, so having a play and getting these bowls made is something that I'm really enjoying, and I'm glad I'm able to share that with everyone. Speaking of things I'm really glad I can share is these beautiful, satisfying cuts. Some reasonable stringers and getting those cuts out nicely. Slowly moving along here in real time and just enjoying the ride. Riding that bevel. Oh yeah. I'm just going to get these shavings off me, and then I'm going to move into some push cuts and start working in those sides to get it a bit closer to round, and I'll be able to get the speed up. So yeah, as you can see, throw in those reasonably long stringers a long way and starting that little pile under my lathe that ends up more than halfway up my lathe. It was a lot of shavings from the inside of those bowls. You'll notice I'm using the wings, and I am using between the back of the wing and the tip of the tool to refine those walls down and try and get rid of the ghosting from the front of the bowl. Now, I am going to move in here to some very satisfying cuts. You may notice that they start getting a bit longer and longer. That's because I've opened the flute a bit more to get a nice hard cut, and it is going very well. This is a real-time clip, and as you can tell, it's cutting a bit faster than last time. Get those shavings off and let's continue. Now, I was going to pick that cut up again, but I decided to bring it down and continue refining a little bit. And then I changed my mind again, and I'm going in for some more satisfying cuts. You'll notice here I'm going a lot straighter and working it straight up towards that edge, trying to get rid of as much of that ghosting as I can. Most of that ghosting is now gone, which is fantastic, and that means I can now officially start to form the shape, which is where the fun really begins because the bowl comes to life. You can see just using those wings again just to get rid of those ridges. Now, on this little one, this is a 2x speed clip. I did use a single pass to go quite a ways up. Now, you may notice the shiny. That is not caused from the tool overheating. In this case, it is caused from me putting too much back pressure. So, while yes, it is a very nice cut and it is coming off with a very nice finish, I'm applying too much pressure and pressing the bevel into the wood, and it's burnishing. So, it's not overheating, but it's also not advisable to do it that way. So, yeah. Still came out quite nice, and then I brought the wings back and tried to fix up the shape. Now, I'm still not entirely sure what shape I'm going to go with on this bowl, so I'm sitting here just taking it down and just seeing what it wants to do. I knew there was some figure in this one, so I wasn't entirely sure, and I was just trying to pay attention to the wood and see what it was doing. So I did stop the lathe and start it several times. I've cut most of those clips out. Tried to keep it mostly to the cutting clips to save time, really. So I was asked to make some snack bowls from a friend, and they were all going to be roughly a similar shape, and the shape was going to be nothing like this. All three bowls ended up completely differently because they all had their own characteristics and they all wanted to shine. Now my friend has expressed how much they enjoy the bowls, so I guess that's a really good thing. So I'm really enjoying the way this wood is cutting. Claret Ash is significantly smoother to cut than Sheoak. Significantly. I cannot stress that enough. It is such a nice wood to work. Anyway, this piece of wood came from a previous co-worker's front yard. They were getting some renovations done and said, "Hey, would you like some wood?" And I said, "Absolutely, I'll be there." So I loaded up the back of my car and took a nice portion. It's been sitting in my garage for the last couple of years. I put some PVA glue on the end to seal it and prevent cracking. Hasn't prevented all cracking because some of them I left the pith in. This is one of those pieces. Now, I am going to mark the foot here so that I can put a recess on it, and then I will core the recess out. So that's just made a nice circular mark, which lines up perfectly with the other side of the tool, which is set to the diameter of my recess teeth. So I'm using a spindle gouge here and just giving it a quick dig out. That tool was in need of a sharpen, but it did the job nicely. So did that, cut out the corner, then I grabbed my smaller bowl gouge and decided to play with some patterns and put some streaks in there. Then I grabbed the detail gouge and tried to square up the sides on that and make it absolutely perfect. So once I had that on, I knew how much space I had, so I started working towards putting a proper foot on so that it was ready for finish, or sanding and finish anyway. So I'm in the process of refining that foot now. So you'll see that I am making a little concave in the middle. So the idea behind that is it will sit on the exterior section of that foot, and the center section will be raised and not creating a wobble. Still using that little bowl gouge that I've got, and it's got the same cut, but it's a much smaller tool, so the wings aren't quite as long. And Butterfingers me has now decided, nope, I don't like this shape. I'm going to start the shape again. So I've remounted after going in for dinner, and I've come out to fix this. So my first step is to remove that foot. Yes, that one that I just made. So I'm going to remove it, and I'm going to reshape and put a new one on. So I'm using that 1/2 inch bowl gouge again and just working it down. I got it nice and flat, and then I move it across, do some face cuts. You'll see I put the tool up there to see just how flat it was. It was nice and flat. Now, as I said, I was reshaping this and going to go with a more defined bowl instead of a nice slope the whole way down. Just bringing in those sides and forming that really nice curvature. Just bring it down a little piece at a time and trying to keep it under control. Now I went back up to that main one and brought that down. Now you'll see I now have curvature and a foot. I think I bring that foot a little bit further down yet, but it's starting to really take shape. And yeah, this is really starting to look good, and I'm very pleased with the way it's going. Now, compared to the earlier cut where I was applying too much pressure, you'll notice that one is nowhere near as shiny. That was just a very nice cut. Still use the wing because I'm still not quite satisfied with the shape that it's got. So I'm just going to keep working that down until I'm satisfied. So right now I'm just defining that foot, and once that's defined, I can then focus on what I'm doing. And of course, wouldn't be me without getting a catch. So a little catch there, and I use that opportunity to bring that curvature in, because I noticed it was getting a bit flat up towards the top. So I'm doing a push cut down from the top, and I'm going to work on trying to refine the actual shape here. So yeah, there was a lot of scraping and refining, trying to get any of those high ridges out and get it nice and balanced. Now, I probably should have changed the angle of the tool rest there because I was starting to lose support. But at the same time, it was getting the job done. It's a much better angle of support going that way. I'm just going to come down and refine that foot. And yeah, comes out quite nice, I think. The shape is really starting to come together, and I'm very pleased with it. Whoops, there's a nice little channel that I'll have to fix. So I'll just flip it around and do that little scraping cut and blend it in. So I pulled out the detail scraper and I am defining that foot. I will then move into putting a recess mark on so that I can cut that out and get ready for coring. I left this till last because I was very satisfied with how it was all coming out. Now you'll see I'm using the detail spindle gouge there. And it wasn't quite doing what I wanted it to do, so I'm switching over to the bowl gouge, my small bowl gouge. So just refining that little foot a little bit and putting a nice rim on the inside of that foot. So I'm just concaving it down a little bit so that it's got an exterior foot to sit on. And then I get the detail gouge out and square up that side. I had a quick look and I was not flat across the bottom. The bottom round was lower than the foot. So I'm just coming in there and taking a little deeper. And just going to touch up the corner of that with the detail scraper. And then I'm going to get a nice catch. Whoops. All good, no damage. Got very lucky on that one. And moving into the sanding. So giving this a quick touch up. I did start quite low. So I hand sanded at 80 and then I've gone up to about 240. So I wanted to keep the texture of wood on this one and not take it over the top with shine. And so I'm using chopping board oil, and I will then apply a beeswax finish. And you can see it's already starting to come up with a really nice sheen from the oil, but you'll also notice it soaks in straight away. So this is good. So I do several layers of the oil and then I go in with the beeswax to give it that really nice sheen. Speaking of that sheen, here we are in real time. That is coming up. What a beautiful specimen of Claret Ash. Alright, let's flip this around and let's get it cored out. Now, for this set of bowls, I did depth holes, which what I did was I kept it about a centimetre further towards the rim because I knew I'd want to core out a bit further down. So I set the depth hole and I went a little bit below it, knowing that I had that space that was safe. So I'm just going to do some face cuts here and clean it up before I actually start coring, because I wanted some really nice smooth cuts as I got into it. So I'm just trying to smooth off that face so that when I actually dig the tool in, it's going to cut beautifully. Alright, so all the discoloration is now gone, and it's time to start coring. And I tagged it, I jumped, I hit the other section over there. You'll see that line where I got a little catch from jumping. Yeah, that happens. Anyway, going back into coring, and as you'll see, I've locked my hand in place and I'm just swiveling it around and getting a nice arc. So I took it down, I brought it out, I took it down a little more in the center, I brought that out, and I just repeated that process until I was satisfied with where I was, and then I decided to work on my final wall dimensions and bowl depth. Throwing some really nice shavings here, and it's very satisfying to watch. You'll notice there I started a little shallow and I brought my arm further down on the screen. So what that was trying to get it more of a 90-degree cut in to try and get that wall down a bit more. So I found these cuts very satisfying. So as I caught up with the other rim, so I'm creating little ridges in there, and as I catch up to them, you'll notice some larger ones start to fly off. They're already nice and long, but when it hits those, they get nice and wide and long. I could have kept going, but it would have been a lot slower to work it. So I decided to keep the cut a bit shallower and work it through. I'm not a fan of that vibration noise. I suspect it's because I'm reaching so far out over the edge of the tool. Because as it gets closer to the support of that tool, the noise goes away. But it could be that it's also the speed as it hits the center. Now I will have to dip my tool here because it's not quite getting rid of that center nub. And I hit the other side and it flicked the tool back at me, but it was not a catch. That was lucky. Just using that inner tip and wing to try and get any of those ridges at the bottom out. Using my hand to measure how thick the wall is the whole way down. And I know I've got a little bit of play there still, so... Next step, I'm going to give the edge a little bit of a softening so that if I catch my hand, it's not going to cut anything up. And now I'm going to go back to trying to work out those ridges. I do end up bringing the wing up the wall here, as again, I really do not enjoy doing that, and it seemed to work out okay in this case. Worked out quite nicely, in fact. So I'm just bringing that bottom down and rounding it off. Now I'm going to flip the tool around and try and get rid of those ridges. You'll see up around the tip there, those ridges are really disappearing quite nicely, and it's doing exactly as I hoped it would. Now, it's always a dangerous game playing with the bottom of the bowl because you're only one slip away from going through the bottom and creating yourself a funnel or a colander. Or in my wife's case, a pot plant. So you may have noticed some tear out down in the bottom of the bowl there. That's kind of expected. I'll sand that out and it'll be fine. Now, I will now move into doing some touch-ups because there is a crack on the knot. And so what I did was just put some glue from the inside. I'd already glued it out from the outside. And so now I'm just fixing it up from the inside. And it is coming together quite nicely. Very happy with that. So I'll rest the bowl up on the edge there because there's still a little bit on the ridge. And I will now touch up any that flowed out the back and clean up the ridge. I'll then start moving into my final cuts. Before I moved into my final cuts, I did go and sharpen. And so here we are. As you can see, very, very fine strands, but they are strands. Flying off there as a nice light cut, moving down the wall, and they're getting bigger because I had some more of the bottom to remove. So throwing some really nice chunky ones as I come around that bottom corner, and I noticed I didn't quite have enough swinging room there. So I ended up with a little lip there, and then I'll work it back again from the center. And it seems to work out quite nicely. The bowl has perfect roundness to it, so I was very happy with that. There was no tool marks with the final result after sanding. Yes, it did take a bit of sanding, but that's alright. Now, as you can see, I've removed those ridges using that wing again, and now I'm back in the bottom of the bowl. And that's come up an absolute treat. Very happy with how this bowl's coming together. We're almost there, and now I'm just doing some very light touches. I noticed there was a little ridge there, so I'm just trying to use the inside wing and bring it down. And now I'm doing a push cut into the bottom, and it's coming up quite nice. Very happy with this bowl. I got to the point where I was like, I'm being finicky, I'm playing with the center of the bowl, that'll sand out. So, straight into sanding, and yeah, run this at super speed because I really don't like sanding. Now, you'll see the lathe here is turning. That's purely from the force of the lathe. I then turned the lathe on and actually power sanded. So I started with the lathe off to get rid of that bottom nub and get rid of some of those tear out that there was from the tool on the end grain. Giving it a sand up, and now I'm applying that chopping board oil. It's already starting to come up an absolute treat. Put some oil on while it wasn't running and let it soak in. And then I turned it on, applied some more while it was running, and that is coming up very nice. I'm going to do one more layer, and you'll see that comes up with a very nice sheen indeed, and that will mix very nicely with the beeswax that I'm now going to apply. So the beeswax is being put on. This beeswax is from Mudgy Honey Haven, and it is, yeah, just a piece of beeswax that I use for my bowls. You may hear that little noise there. There's a little bit of a crack going on the surface of the bowl, and it's just changing textures. And that has come up an absolute treat. So this is the first snack bowl of the three, and if you're liking in this, please like and subscribe. There will be one more video of this series, and I hope you've enjoyed. I'll now move into the photos. Thank you very much.